today's financial situation in Asia Pacific has become a little bit exciting because the establishment of AIIB by China, initiated by China. But having said that, we'll say that ADB, which was established about 50 years ago, 1966, was largely the result of rise of Japan. So if there is AIIB, largely because of rise China, is not exactly unpredicted. But the problem here, of course, is that to what extent ADB and AIIB can work with each other. But the question here is, first and foremost, of course, is if AIIB, initiated by China, participated by about 57 countries, can work in the first place. If AIIB can work as a profit-making bank, without that, no international investment institutions can really work with AIIB. Given that condition, it is even more important for people working in this industry, especially for those who are trying to setting up as AIIB, as international investment institutions, to look at how the other international investment institution works, especially ADB, because ADB has been here, again, like I said, for 50 years. Now today, we have a great honor and privilege to have Mr. Nakao, President of ADB, here to tell us how ADB has been working successfully with us in this region for 50 years. What are the principles of ADB, and what's the vision and the view from ADB's perspective, how ADB can be such substantial contributor to our prosperity in this region today. We know that Mr. Nakao assumed the presidentship of ADB in 2013, and before that, he was Vice Minister of Japan's Ministry of Finance, and he also served in the World Bank, IMF, and other senior positions in the International Financial Institute. Please join me to thank and welcoming Mr. Nakao.
Thank you very much. This is a really great honor to come to this school, and I respect late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew very much. And I still remember that he wrote at the Japanese economic journal Nikkei for 30 days in 1990s maybe. It's a very famous column of the paper, and he wrote a lot about how he designed the country, how he struggles to make this, how to say, small country prosper, peaceful. And he wrote some other things. One is that when he was a child in Singapore, he respected neighbor Japanese people like a laundryman or the small shop and so on because of diligence and a smiley attitude. Then the Japanese army came, and his image of Japanese was totally altered, of course negatively. So I felt really bad that the war made the image of Japan totally deteriorated. So we should take it seriously. Another point I still remember is he wrote in the paper that Tokyo is the ugliest city in the world. No organization. There is no organization, no order. Buildings height are different, and not so many green places. But in a way, Tokyo contrasts with Singapore very much. Tokyo is more disorganized and has a legacy from 400 years ago, and there were many waters around the castles, and gardens from 200 years ago. At the same time, there are small houses or big buildings and so on. But it is, in a sense, a charm of Tokyo from my perspective today. Everything organized is not so interesting either. So it depends on the people's feeling. And at that moment, I thought Tokyo can be better organized. But today, if we compare Singapore and Tokyo, both countries are attractive. And one of the charm of Tokyo is a history from 400 years ago and some disorganized way of doing things. But anyway, I really respect Lee Kuan Yew, and that's why when I thought about what is the needed for development, I should start from this one. 8 economic conditions. When I visited Sri Lanka 1 year ago, I talked about this. So I visited already around 30 developing countries in Asia. We have 48 regional countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. They have never borrowed from ADB. 45 member countries have borrowed from us, including Singapore and Korea. But they already graduated from borrowing. And we have 19 non-regional members, like the United States, Canada, European countries, as a kind of contributors of capital, as well as donors for some concessional window grant. I visited about 30 countries already out of 45. And I found that there are there are common conditions for growth. Of course, these are not new ideas at all. But Asia has achieved tremendous success since ADB was established in 1966. When ADB was established, the poverty was so prevalent in Asia, and it was even poorer than many African countries. Korean per capita GDP was smaller than that of Ghana or Ivory Coast. And the most immediate urgent need of Asia was how to feed the people which are really populated. Asia is a populated area, and population growth, can the food supply surpass the population growth? That was a challenge. But today, of course, most of the Asian countries are middle-income countries. China is upper middle-income country, and Singapore is, of course, one of the richest economy in terms of per capita GDP, and Korea is, of course, one of OECD member. So Asia has achieved a lot. And if I look at the countries, Myanmar started re-engagement with the international community 3 years ago, or it depends on how we regard it, but in 2013, before I came to ADB, I chaired, in the fall of 2012, I chaired the international meeting in Tokyo, in the margin of the IMF World Bank meeting, to discuss how the World Bank, ADB, and Japanese lending institution, JICA, and others could restart lending to Myanmar based on what kind of conditions, what kind of the debt relief they could give. We discussed these issues. And of course, the Myanmar's re-engagement could happen because of the economic reform of a country, and also better macroeconomic policies, including moving to single exchange rate system from a multiple exchange rate system, and also the effort of democratization, and also effort of ethnic reconciliation. So based on those things, the US decided to gradually remove the sanctions about the usage of the dollar. Before then, transaction involving any Myanmar people couldn't happen through any international banks. So even if a transaction is made between Japanese bank and American bank in Frankfurt, if it is caught by the US Treasury or Fed, huge sanction. So that transaction was just in cash somehow. But anyway, what I wanted to say is the international community started re-engage with Myanmar and started lending to the country again, and the growth is dramatic. So almost all countries in Asia are now trying to do the same thing. So because this is a Kuan University, I want to start from these ideas of how development happens. So it's not new idea at all, but I want to restate my ideas. And then I'll go to some discussions of Asian economies and ADB, and then I'll touch upon the issues of AIIB and so on. So, so these are 8 things I want to highlight. One is infrastructure investment. And the reason China is growing very fast is they invest heavily in road and highways and railways and so on. So of course it gives a demand to the GDP, but it also prepare the conditions for investment and private investment, and also it works to help the poverty reduction. Because unless there is a highway, railways and so on, people cannot move. They cannot get good jobs. They cannot go to schools and hospitals. So infrastructure is not just about economic development. It is also about social development and poverty reduction. Without power, women are often confined to house more. They cannot have more time to work and enjoy. So it's related to gender issues. So anyway, infrastructure investment is so important. And in case of Philippines, where the ADB is hosted, investment in infrastructure is so limited. So public investment by the government, money is like 3 or 4%. In China, it is at least 13% or 14%. So of course, how we can regard public investment, power is usually by private sector in many countries. So the definition, classifications of public works and infrastructure investment is, there are many ways of defining it. But all in all, China invests a lot, and Philippines, Indonesia are not investing as much. Investment in health and education, people are so important. When I talked with the Mahathir of Malaysia, he said the secret of development of Malaysia is investment in infrastructure and education. That's what he clearly said. And this school and the way Singapore has developed is one example of this kind of things. And the third is macroeconomic stability. If we compare Latin America and Asia, Asia has kept sound economic policies much more than other regions, and especially after the Asian crisis. Once again, Asian countries were reminded that the sound fiscal policies, stable monetary policy, holding some buffers of foreign exchange, strengthening financial sectors, good regulations and supervision are essential. So even before the Asian crisis, relatively Asian countries pursue the good policies, but exchange rate was more or less pegged to the dollar. There was no volatility in the exchange rate market, and inflation was not so clear, but asset inflation happened. So Asian countries were happy to have higher growth with a lot of inflow of capital to Asian regions in 1994 to 1996. Then the Asian crisis happened in 1997, and since then, I believe that the Asian countries have adopted very sound policies again, including strengthening the financial sector. So today, because of the trilemma of international finance, we cannot achieve three goals. One is exchange rate stability, and one is monetary policy independence, and third is a free flow of capital. So now we have a free flow of exchange rate and capital. So free flow of capital means free flow of exchange rate means there is no exchange rate stability, but there is a lot of capital flows between countries, and it promotes investment and higher growth. And also there is a certain independence of monetary policy, but the exchange rate moves. But anyway, in these kind of situations, what is important is to pursue good macroeconomic policies and to strengthen the financial sector. I'm sorry to deviate from my main line because I want to say something when I talk other things. Until 1997, until 1990s, the stability of the economy was more about fiscal policy and monetary policies. So when IMF and World Bank had annual meetings, the finance ministers and central bank governors are most important players. They are still most important, but what we realized is the regulators are also very important, and regulators of financial markets should be a little bit independent from monetary policies and fiscal policies. So anyway, the Asian economies have gained, learned a lot from Asian crisis. Without the macroeconomic stabilities, they cannot invest in for the future. They would rather try to gain from short-term transactions. Fourth is open trade and investment regimes. This is really important, and in 1970s, up to 1970s or 80s, of course China was a centrally controlled economy, no idea of a market, and even in India and Indonesia, those were not regarded communist countries, but they were also taking policies such as import substitute, state-owned enterprises, high tariffs, and so on. They wanted to industrialize countries by avoiding the influence of foreign companies, which are more competitive. But it didn't work I wouldn't say at all, but it didn't work as expected. And the economies became very, very inefficient. But they started opening up the countries. In China, Cultural Revolution ended in 1976. 4 gangs were arrested in 1976. And then they started gradually reform, including market-oriented policies, and it was reinforced in 1990s. In Vietnam, doi moi started late 1980s, and it is more full-fledged efforts of market reform or market-oriented reforms. And in Myanmar, as I said, at least in 11, 12, they started a serious effort of moving to the market. And in India and Indonesia, of course, they are now trying to be more like a market economy. Of course, Indonesia has been always market economy, but they want to deregulate things and to promote more export than import substitutions. So this changed the Asian development landscape dramatically. There is no question that we should do this even more, and ASEAN community is one of the ideas to promote these things. Sixth is public governance, anti-corruption, and so on. And it's not just anti-corruption. The efficiency, effectiveness of service delivery by the government is so important. So many people talk about corruption when they discuss governance, but once again, it's not just corruption. Corruption is so bad because it's not fair, but it is so bad because the energy of the people are diverted to getting kind of economic rent instead of innovating, instead of working hard. So it's not just equity issue, but it's an efficiency issue. But also, how to deliver public service is so important. In that regard, the integrity and also the talent, capacity of government institutions, including bureaucracy, is so important. The sixth is social inclusiveness. So if there is a very big divide between the poor people and rich people, poor people are not given a chance of education as much as others, and they would give up the idea of working hard and moving up in the social strata. And the seventh is vision for the future. So that's what I really wanted to say when I talked about late Lee Kuan Yew, because he had a vision about Singapore, about the state, how it could develop. Korean President Park in 1960s had a vision how to industrialize the country. We need always visions of the leaders or the government about how to plan the development of countries. It doesn't contradict to the idea of a market, because in my view, the government has a very important role of planning the vision, investing in the infrastructure, investing in the human capital, and prepare the good regulatory systems about environmental impact or social impact, regulations about financial sectors and so on, to negotiate a trade agreement with others. So the government has a crucial role, and the government should have a vision. So I really hate the kind of idea that market can do everything. The government doesn't matter so much. It's not really true. Even to maintain good market, we need a government to penalize such things like manipulation, inside trades, and so on. Even to maintain market, we need a government. No question about it. So the government should have a vision. And the final one is political stability, security, and good relations with neighboring countries. This is a really important point for me. If we look at the international community, there are many difficult issues in Middle East and North Africa and so on. And also European countries also have serious issues of now immigrants, some issues in Ukraine and so on, and the Greek issue and so on. So in Asia, of course, there are many issues. But what is important is to keep stability, security. We have challenging situations in Afghanistan and Pakistan in our membership. But except those two countries, more or less, Asian economies maintain security, stability, safety. And Asian countries have kept good relations between countries, especially after the end of the conflict in Mekong region, or Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos and Myanmar. And also there is a development progress in the reconciliations between the Philippine government and Mindanao's Islamic groups. So we need to keep this. We need to keep a secular system regarding Islamic ideas and so on. We have so many Muslim states like Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Of course, there are other religious groups there, but we keep secular governments, and that is really important. And how to promote this through the good international relations? I think this school is teaching a lot of international politics relations. But what is really important is, even if there are some differences in the views and there are some, disputes, it's so important to keep the friendship between the countries, the spirit of working together. And ADB is promoting regional cooperation and integration in such areas like Greater Mekong sub-region, Pacific and South Asia, Central Asia, and East Asia. We don't have a specific one for East Asia, but China is part of a Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Group. So that is my first talk about that. So once again, I'd like to quickly cover all these things. These are our member countries. And there are many Central Asian countries and Pacific Island countries, and there are non-regional countries. This is just some examples of countries. And China now has a per capita GDP of more than 7,000. I should have included Singapore, but anyway, Singapore per capita GDP is like 50 or even more. Japanese per capita GDP declined a lot because of depreciations of the yen. When I was a vice minister, I intervened in the foreign exchange rate market twice, and by about $100 billion in a day to avoid the appreciation beyond the 75 yen per dollar. But it is now 120 something. So I shouldn't mention the level of exchange rate, but 75 yen per dollar is too strong. 120 something. I don't know whether it is too weak or not. I shouldn't mention it. But anyway, there are differences in the GDP, but they are growing, and even Pakistan is regarded now the lower end of middle income countries, and I expect that Myanmar can grow very quickly. China's total GDP is already 10 trillion, and more than double that of Japan, and there is a question whether they can reach US level. According to the purchasing power parity, China may have already surpassed United States, but I don't really believe a PPP, purchasing power parity idea, because it's very difficult to compare the price. Tofu in Sichuan, the price, is that the same tofu which is sold in, posh market in New York, for instance? So it's very difficult to compare it. But anyway, China's growth is remarkable. And its influence economically, politically, commercially, geopolitically, it's a central issue for Asian countries and also for the international community. Growth has been robust, and what I'm always saying is even after the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, Asia has grown continuously, partly because of a stimulus package of China, very strong growth of China even after the global financial crisis. This year we are expecting 6.1, and China's number here is 7. We may need to adjust a little bit, but overall what I want to say is that Asia has been growing steadily, and there was idea whether Asia could keep stronger growth after global financial crisis. Is there any decoupling or not? But I would say there was a certain decoupling. Of course, any country cannot avoid the influence from other countries' slowdown. But as far as Asian countries are concerned, even in 2009, 10, just after the Lehman crisis, Asian economies as a whole kept a very robust growth. I would like to touch upon ADB, and it was established in 1966, 67 member countries, and $151 billion of capital as compared to 100 of AIIB. But we have $17 billion paid in capital, and including a concession window, we have $50 billion of paid in equity. So maybe AIIB will start from $4 billion of paid in equity. They will target 20 billions for paid in equity out of 100 billion. So in that regard, we are much more capitalized at this moment. The staff number is about 3,000. Contributing members, these were major, shareholders. And this ADF, which is for concessional lending and grant operation, Japan made huge contributions. And the contributions of shareholders to this ordinary capital resource is about 7 billion. And with the retaining income, it is now 17. But this ADF is just the taxpayers' money is donated to ADF to support poorer countries like Myanmar or Afghanistan. So this ADB operations and ordinary capital resources 10 billion each year lending, and outstanding is 56, and equity is 17. And the ADF, each year's approval is like 3 billion, including grant, and outstanding is 27. And we have a lot of equity because we don't use leverage at all. In case of OCL, we have equity and we issue bonds, and with a certain spread over funding cost, we lend. But in case of ADF, we don't leverage at all. So we use this equity just as it is for lending. But we have decided to merge these two windows to use this combined equity of 50 billion more efficiently by using leverage. So we now have a much more lending capacity because we can use leverage for this ADF too. So we are saying that lending can be increased by 50% overall, and support to poor countries, ADF eligible countries can be increased by 70%. Operations increased after the crisis and even before crisis. It's like 10 billion. Just after the crisis, lending jumped because of so much policy-based lending, not project loan, but support for budget. And major borrowers from ordinary capital resources are India and China. as I said, Singapore already graduated. And transport and energy is a major sector, but much of it is related to the climate change. This is for ADF, and of course the total amount is smaller. This is each year's approval. And Pakistan, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Nepal, and Myanmar was a very big for 2013 after re-engagement. So this is a scenario of Asian century. At present, by the way, this Asia includes Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Asia's portion of our GDP is 29% in 2013. And in 2050, it will be 52% from Asia. And this is, by the way, kind of a market rate. And Asia's GDP now is 22 trillion, but it will be 174. But it's not unthinkable, because Asia's population is more than 50% of the world. So if Asia can do as good as average, Asia's GDP will be more than 50. This is the historical estimates, and Asia was more than 50% up to the Industrial Revolution, especially because of productivity of China, Qing dynasty, and also population of Qing dynasty was really big. If I remember correctly, this is Mangas, what is his name, estimate by the British professor. And, yeah, that's right. Angus Madison, yeah. And at that moment, per capita GDP of Qing dynasty was 1/4 of Europe. Edo's, Japan's per capita GDP is 1/2 of Europe. But because of a very large population of Qing dynasty, and also smaller difference of per capita GDP, Asia was a much bigger portion. But then afterwards, after Industrial Revolution, Asia became much smaller. But this is the time that we have, Asia has a larger number. But we still have a lot of poor people. And if we use 1.25 per day threshold, we still have 500 million people who are really poor. And if we use a $2 per day threshold, it is 1.34 billion people, which is about 40% of the population. So for us, I mean for ADB, poverty reduction will continue to be a main target. And even in middle-income countries like China or, of course, in India, there are many poor people. How to support them is one important issue. This I already mentioned. And there are our strategies or goals, and inclusive economic growth, environmentally sustainable growth, and regional integration. And this is the midterm review of Strategy 2020, which I did after I became president. One of the very important areas is middle-income countries, how to support middle-income countries, and how to support private sector development, and how to strengthen knowledge. Because in middle-income countries, they can finance themselves, issuing a local currency denominated bond. They don't need to come to us if it is just about the finance. So we need to combine knowledge with the finance. The 8, 9, 10s are how we should use financial resources better, and also how we can co-finance, and efficiency, and how to make our organizations adapted to the new challenges. So I'd like to mention very quickly about our relation with China. China has been always very important member, and in 1980s, People's Republic of China became a member officially, but we still keep Taipei China and Hong Kong China as a separate membership of ADB. That is one of the unique point of ADB. China has been a very important big borrower from us, and it is still number 2 next to India. And my idea is that we should continue to engage with China through knowledge work, but also through lending. I think this is a kind of the thing which is related to international politics. Some countries say that China should graduate from borrowing as soon as possible because there is a lot of money. They can finance themselves. They have a lot of tax revenues. There are so many rich people. So, but to me, it's nice to have China as a borrower because China wants to borrow from us in the first place. I visited China 5 times, and I met Prime Minister Lee, and every time I met Minister Lo Jiwei and discussed at least 1 hour and a half about our partnership, the development challenge of China and so on. We are partner for new 5-year plan. They want to keep a relation with us because by borrowing from ADB and by combining it with our knowledge and experiences, they can persuade, the government can persuade the local authorities and state-owned enterprises to pursue some reforms. Our money is very limited, 1.5 or 1.7 or whatever. It's very small money compared to the need of finance for China, but still it is an important tool for Chinese authorities to have a certain impact on reforms. And for us, it is good to continue to engage with China. If we don't lend to China, ADB's relevance in Asia is much more limited. And also, our lending to China is quasi-market-based or non-concessional, which means we lend them at a rate funding cost plus spread, and we can earn some money, and it can be used for financing our administrative cost, and also profit can be transferred to supporting the poorer countries. And also, without China on the balance sheet, our portfolio of lending is so narrow, and the rating, it has an impact on the rating of our agency. And also supporting China's, we are concentrating in climate change, environmental issues, and water management, and so on. So there is an element of public goods, externality. So it is an important issue for neighboring countries, environmental and pollution issues. And also climate change is a global issue. So ADB wants to continue to engage with China in a positive way. And it is also the case for AIIB and ADB. I had a very good discussion with the president candidate. There is only one, so he will be one, Mr. Ching. He was vice president of ADB before I came, but I have had a chance to see him several times. And in Baku, Azerbaijan, this May, when we had annual meeting of ADB, Mr. Ching came to Baku, and I had a chance to talk with him for more than 1 hour. And we agreed to 4 things, and ADB issued a press release about it with a shaking hand photograph. And the 4 points is infrastructure is important not just for economic development, but also for social progress. Second, we need more finance for infrastructure. And third, when we do infrastructure works, safeguards for economic impact, environmental impact and social impact, like resettlement of the people, are so important. And fourth, ADB and AIIB will collaborate and will co-finance the project. And I already instructed my staff to identify the possible co-financing projects as soon as possible, earlier than later. So there is no question that it's better for ADB to collaborate with the ADB. Many members of new AIIB want it because if we can support them in safeguard policies and so on, it's better. And for us, AIIB can be a very important co-financier to complement our financing capacity. No question about it. So they are aiming at lean institutions without the resident board, which means executive directors, board members in Beijing. They want to do it in internet or whatever. Also, they say they wouldn't have resident missions, countries, offices at this moment. ADB has both of them. ADB has 12 executive directors from constituencies, including China. That is one country's constituencies, and Southeast Asia and Europe and so on. ADB has in 26 countries we have a resident mission or offices. These systems can support our co-financing work with the AIIB. We can use our strength of 50 years of history and experiences together with these systems to work with the AIIB. There are other issues I want to discuss, but I already spoke too much, and so I'll finish here, and we still have some time to do question and answers.
Yep.
Thank you very much.